We often think about wealth in terms of what we have in the bank, right? But what if the real measure is what we give away? That's the big question we're tackling today. We're going to dive into the story of someone whose generosity was just on another level, and his story might completely change how you see things.
So this verse right here, this is kind of the foundation for everything we're about to talk about. It completely reframes the idea of wealth. It suggests it's not really yours to keep. It's more like something you're looking after, a trust. And the real value? Well, that gets unlocked when you spend it to help others. This single idea is what drives the whole story.
And honestly, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better example of someone who lived this principle than Uthman ibn Affan. He was a companion of the Prophet Muhammad, and his life story, well, it's basically a masterclass in what it means to be genuinely, truly wealthy.
Okay, so first things first. Uthman was a very successful businessman. I mean, we're talking one of the wealthiest guys around. But here's what makes him so fascinating. It's how he saw that money. For him, it wasn't about a high score, It wasn't proof of his success. It was a tool for his faith and a way to serve the community. Whenever there was a need, he was always the first one to step up, without ever worrying about running out.
So, okay, that's the theory. But what does that actually look like in real life? Well, our first story starts with something absolutely essential for survival: water. Picture this. The early Muslim community, they've just moved to Medina, and they run into a huge problem. There's barely any fresh water. The main source, this well called Bi'r Roomah, is owned by some guy who's charging for every single bucket. Can you imagine having to pay for the most basic thing you need to live? That was the reality they were facing. So seeing everyone struggling, the Prophet Muhammad makes an announcement. He puts out a call. But listen to the offer here. He doesn't promise a financial return. Buy this and you'll make your money back. No. The reward he offers is something in paradise. This wasn't a business deal. It was a transaction for the soul. And who answers that call? Uthman. And just look at this number, 35,000 dirhams. We're talking silver coins here. This was an absolutely insane amount of money back then. Truly life-changing wealth. And he's not investing it in some venture to get even richer. He's spending it all based on a promise of a reward in the next life. Wow. And here's the kicker. He buys the well, and then he just gives it away. He turns it into a public trust. So just like that, his one act of incredible generosity meant that everyone, rich, poor, travelers, didn't matter, had free, fresh water. He solved a massive community crisis in a single move. All right, so that was problem number one. Now let's move on because this pattern continues. The community was growing fast, and with more people came another pressing need, a place for them all to gather. The Prophet's mosque in Medina, this was the absolute heart of the community. It was where they prayed, learned, made decisions, everything. But it got too small fast. It was just packed. The very place that was supposed to unite everyone was literally bursting at the seams. And so you see the same thing happen again. The Prophet points out the problem. They needed to buy the land next door to expand the mosque. And just like before, he frames the solution as an investment not for this world, but for the next. And guess who steps up again? Uthman. This time, he puts down 25,000 dirhams. Again, just a huge sum of money straight from his own pocket to fix a problem for the entire community. You really start to see a pattern here, right? A problem pops up, a call for help goes out, and boom, Uthman's wealth is on the table. And because of him, the mosque was expanded, and it could once again be that central hub for everyone. Okay, so those two acts of generosity are incredible on their own, but they were really just warming up for the main event. The one moment that defined everything. A time when the community faced a massive threat, and it required a level of giving that was just off the charts. So, here's the situation. They had to get an army ready to face the powerful Byzantine army. This wasn't a small thing. It was a massive campaign. It needed a ton of funding, and the Prophet asked everyone to give whatever they could. People gave what they had, but it wasn't enough. They needed something extraordinary. And then came Uthman. Now look at this number. We're not talking about silver anymore. We're talking 1,000 dinars, gold coins. This was an absolute fortune. The historical sources are clear. It was an amount that nobody else could even come close to. The way it's described is just so powerful. Uthman literally walks up to the Prophet, and he just pours the gold coins out from his cloak right into the Prophet's lap. Can you just imagine that?
The sight, the sound of 1,000 gold coins, the funding for an entire army just appearing in an instant. It was so much money, so complete, that people said it was like he funded the whole army all by himself. At the most critical moment, when everything was on the line, his wealth was what stood between the community and disaster. It was their shield. And this is the peak of the story. The Prophet is sitting there, turning these gold coins over in his hands, and he looks at Uthman and says something incredible. He says, nothing could harm Uthman no matter what he does after this. And he didn't just say it once, he repeated it. This was way more than a thank you. It was like a divine seal of approval, a recognition of a sacrifice so sincere, it was literally off the charts. So a guarantee like that, what does that even mean? It points to a totally different way of looking at a person's life and their worth. And that's really the heart of it all. It wasn't just about the cash. What we learn from Uthman's story is that when you make a sincere sacrifice, especially when times are tough, it has a value that you just can't measure in worldly terms. It was about his sincerity, the timing, and his absolute faith in a reward beyond this life. It shows that our true wealth isn't what we have, but what we give. Which brings us right back to our original question, doesn't it? What really is the true measure of wealth? Is it the number you see in your bank account, or is it something more? Is it the problems you solve, the people you help, and the good you leave behind in the world?